The glory of casting, however, I think is at the heart of my shifting this from what was starting out to be an oracle deck and turning it into a casting system. That ability to cast and what you gain from casting is at the heart of why I did things this way. So while I want to show that it can work really beautifully that way, and I in fact use it that way quite a bit, at the same time, the beauty of casting is something that I want to highlight. If you take, now I tend to cast everything in sets of 9. So here's 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. I very rarely, aka almost never, do I do full casting of runes or oghams, because it's a lot. That's a lot. That's 25. It's like doing a 25 card tarot reading, right? That's a lot of energy. And of course, you're not looking sometimes at the things that are face down, things that are off the spread. There's a lot of different ways you can whittle that down, but it's still a very intense amount of energy to be working with. So I tend to do casts of 9. So, you know, in casting systems, one of the beauties is that you are looking at things that are upright, things that are face down, perhaps blocked, things that form patterns like this where they have connected with each other, Fehu being upright, but you know, going in and thinking about, okay, why are these forming this pattern? So we see that in runes, which is something that I teach. We see that in oghams. I'm just going to grab 6. I tend to do everything in sets of 3. So we can see that in oghams when we cast. Oghams are fabulous. I like casting cloths for oghams more because of what you just saw. They do tend to roll, and I actually have this up on the edge, so it's kind of leaning just slightly down. So I tend to not cast like that, but generally you'll get some kind of configuration like this where, okay, what is touching and shooting off from here? What's going on with this cluster of things that are overlapping each other? We're not just seeing the single energy, but we're seeing how those energies are interrelating with the other figures around it. We also see that in charm casting. Just grab a handful here, where you grab a bunch of charms and you cast them. You're seeing things that have fallen over. You're seeing things that are touching each other and stacked. You're seeing little clusters of things. Sometimes, a lot of times, what I love to see is where you might see a path, right? That kind of will go like this, and you'll say, okay, there's this path to follow. So there is, in casting systems, there is this wonderful interaction of the energy, because in the world around us, energy is not compartmentalized away in neat, here's the fire energy, here's the air energy, here's the earth energy, here's the water energy over here, right? Life, it doesn't work that way. The world around, the energetic world around us doesn't work so precisely. It is moving and shifting and interacting. And so when I started to come to that epiphany that maybe that this isn't supposed to be a deck. Maybe this is supposed to really be able to relate that energy of casting. So I'll do the same thing here. 3, 6, 9. What is the beauty of that is that we're looking at energy. Each of these symbols relates to energy and the way that it is either in the world around us, or it is in ourselves, or it is in a particular situation, or other people's energy that is around us. It's meshing and melding and interacting with our energy, right? That stuff doesn't stay neatly compartmentalized. And so that when we, whoa, see, vigorous caster. I get excited talking about this stuff. So that when you cast things, what I love to see what things are stacked and what does that mean. I like to see, okay, up here in the future, there's something that is reverse, this idea of will and power here, confidence that is reverse. It's coming, but it's not quite realized, and it's far up there in the future, right? And seeing the way that things, I always look to stacked things. I like to see things that are clumped. I like to see movement and see what something might be pointing to. All of those kinds of things become at play when you use casting. And so I really think that while a person could use my journey token in spreads and enjoy them and get something out of them without ever having cast a single time, I think that you would be missing out on the point and the beauty of casting, because of those interrelations of the energy that are around us. So if somebody had, for example, a question here, let me get another one of my tester questions. So if this is going to be a reading on somebody in a relationship. So he's in a new relationship, very intensely new relationship, and so we just kind of want to just get a general feel for it. It doesn't have a specific question other than the energy surrounding this new relationship and the trajectory. Now, when I'm drawing for casting, right, I don't need to get it all in one swoop necessarily, because I'm still going to shake it up and cast it. But I'm going to do the same sort of thing where I'm thinking about the question, I'm thinking about the situation as I'm kind of going through, and then generally, because I cast by 9s, I'll take out 3. I don't really pay attention to them. I continue to think about the question, la la la, do my thing, pull out 3, and then do that one more time. Or if I'm going to do 6, because generally if I'm casting, I'm doing 6 or 9. I don't generally cast 3. If I'm going to pull 3, I'm just going to lay them out. So unless there are exceptions, because sometimes I will cast them onto tarot cards, but we'll talk about that in the next video. And then sometimes I do actually cast 3. But in terms of what we're talking about right now, I tend to cast in either 6 or 3. If you're new to casting, I would say go with the 6, because again, you don't have quite so many. It's just like the difference between a 6-card reading and a 9-card reading. There's a difference there, and so take that into consideration. So I pulled the 9 figures, but of course, we haven't cast them. We've randomly and synchronistically found them, and now you want to shake them up. And I do like to manipulate. So for example, if I'm doing an OM reading, usually I have more in my hand, but I'm literally rolling them back and forth in hand. Sometimes I roll them until they pop out. That's just because the nature of this OM set being sticks like this, I'll just keep rolling them until a certain number that I need pop out. I'll take them all in hand. But I am, as I'm casting, I'm flicking them, moving them, and then also the synchronicity of casting. The same thing with a handful of runes or tokens, or if it's geomancy and I'm doing dice. If I have my 4 random geomancy dice out, I'm rolling them, I'm shaking them, I'm rolling them about, I'm shaking them, and the whole time thinking about the question, much like you're doing when you are shuffling a deck. It's the same sort of thing. And there's something really satisfying about that tactileness. So you can kind of pick them up and drop them in your hands as you're thinking about your question. You could leave that as a jumper, but I'm just kind of hovered over this trying to get my hands in a good position where you're still seeing them, and normally I would be back here. And I'm kind of like this so you can see, right? Give them some shakes, give them some stirs, shake them, put them hand to hand, back and forth. You're going to find, just like with shuffling, you're going to find what works for you. And whenever you've done what you're going to do, give them the last do, and cast them. You can see why that was a very vigorous casting. You don't have to slam them down quite so hard, but that's why it's nice to have an edge here. Now, if you don't have an edge, one of the benefits is that you could literally say, okay, this one is no longer in play. This one probably would have gone off the board and is no longer in play. So I like, especially this one that's kind of tipped up, I might kind of take that into consideration. And especially since it's so far away and it is receptive energy and it's over here and it almost bounced off, I would say that, you know, this isn't the time in the relationship for that sort of passiveness. This is a very energetic reading, because here we actually see the active energy in play in the future. So we have an active north position here, which is clarity, wisdom, some hindsight, right, in the future about how things are going to be. Now, again, technically, these two probably would have flown off because I was being very vigorous. You don't have to slam them down. I do like a satisfying cast, but you start to get a feel for it. I haven't cast these actually on a board because I've been casting them on a cloth. I'm just waiting to do that one for you. So that made them go flying. So anyways, but that can tell us something there. So at first glance, of course, we don't have my favorite thing, and that's probably because I was so hard in casting them. I love to see stacks, right? But we do have what looks to be, you know, so we have this sort of pathway going here. We do see the energy of grounding needing to be at play, the energy of roots and connections running deep. For me, the roots in the tree go down into the web. This idea of why things are so passionate and connected between these people could go quite deep, right? This feeling like you've known somebody forever and having something go from 0 to 100, that there could be reasons for that. There could be deeper connections between the two of them. If you believe in past lives, you could think about, there may have been ways in which they have actually met before in different past lives, because we're talking about the lower world here. So that to me is very interesting, because it speaks to that yes, it feels like it's going fast and strong, but there may be some really strong connections at play as well. We do have the cycles. So again, if you want, what you can do is turn the one over and just make a note of it. Again, this is something that I do with runes and oghams. I don't, again, do it with charm casting for the reasons I've said, but make that idea that, you know, things are going to shift and change. Right now, it's not. Right now, everything seems like it's in one speed. I mean, this is certainly something that has been said, that it's just like full on in one speed, but there will actually be shifts and cycles and changes, and things will move to a different energy point. It's just right now that energy is not really in play. So then we have the, now this is where Patrick, so we have, I don't have the 8 moons, I have 4 moons. So I have the full moon, the new moon, and then waxing and waning crescent moons, just to show that waxing and waning energy. But I have the hardest time when I look at moon phases of trying to remember whether something is waxing or whether something is waning. And so Patrick told me a little rhyme that is to help me remember. And so right is bright, and so it's waxing, whereas left is leaving, so it's waning, right? So we do have some of this intensity waning with this waning moon here. And it's interesting because it's kind of in conjunction with this, if this was, and I can flip this because I'm not reading them in different directions. That's a whole nother video. But with these kind of together, face, you know, upright and together, I love this kind of idea that the energy that's at play right now is going to wane, and it is going to start to develop into something, or has a great energetic potential to develop into something more than that. And so that's interesting to see those two cards together, or cards, sorry, I still say those kinds of things, tokens. So then this one is reversed. This is actually again, remember there are 4 season symbols from an old almanac, and this is the symbol for summer. And so again, that summertime. So we have that spring new energy, flowers are coming up, bunnies are mating. There's a lot of high passion and excitement over not being in spring. But then things shift into the summer days, right? So those long summer nights. I'm not going to start singing from Greece, right? But we can see, again, a shift in energy that's going to occur from what's being explained in terms of today. But this is also about the environment around them. But it is reversed right now. And so is the final one. So we can really see that this energy is kind of clumped here, and a lot of the energy is not in play yet. Here we have the new moon, things becoming more intentional, setting that, what are the intentions for the relationship? That stuff is going to come later down the road. It isn't there yet, right? And so again, I'm just really getting that strong message here that there is probably a reason, a deeper reason why, a deeper connection as to why everything does seem to be hard and fast and intense emotion. And then how you'd want to look at these because they're further away. So generally when I'm doing any kind of casting, you're looking here as more sort of the past, and the middle area is more of the present, and then the further away as the future. Just in general, in a general sense, I tend to do that. Some people, might do it, this way, where you might move, which makes sense. But for casting, I've always cast, because I think of the way the motion that you cast, you're kind of casting in often that motion, or you can try to drop straight. But there is a little bit of that dice throwing in my way of casting, that it just makes sense for me to go past to future here. And so everybody's casting is going to be different. But so that even in a casting in which there are no positions laid out on the board, right? There's nothing here saying that this section means this or that section means that. You still can have that general sense of movement and flow and follow things in those particular directions. But there'll be some active assessing and looking back with a sense of clarity and wisdom in the future. It's coming, but it's not at the moment in play there. And sort of certainly passive or receptive energy is probably really off of the board at the moment. Which could have that indication that there's always going to be a high degree of passion, that some people just have relationships that are high energy, and that may be something that's always going to be in play. And it might still ebb and flow and move with cycles, but that may be a component of the relationship. So there's just a quick example of just the beauty of casting. But it's just fun if if you have a system of casting, just taking like 9 things and just seeing the variety of ways that you can cast. Like this immediately takes my attention because I have this little cluster of 3 here. The fact that so many are face down and really says a lot, right? Just in scanning, we see, okay, there's a lot of energy it's there, but it's not fully in play, right? We only really can focus on just 3 out of the 9 that are face up and maybe fully in play. And so that can tell us something even before we start to read, right? So there's just so many different configurations that the same 9 figures that you cast will find themselves falling in. Like, I love the arrow feeling of this one, right? For me, I'm seeing this shape of an arrow here, and so that, as a reader, that kind of informs me. I'm seeing this right that's going on here, and then what is this over here telling me about this arrow shooting? Of course, there would be a question in mind. So how the figures fall and how they interact and go in a straight line, what will inform the way the reading is read. So for example, with this reading, if I was doing a reading on a question, I might see these, I might pay attention to these side energy. I might see sort of the receptive energy here and the summer energy here, but I'm really going to follow this line and then again see how these might reflect each other, because we've sort of got these answering things here, but I'm going to definitely follow a more linear reading following these lines because of the way things fall and the way that your intuition keys in on clusters and groupings. And it really makes for a dynamic style of reading that is just really adds so many different layers and depths to readings. I hope that that helps a little bit to give you an idea of the different ways that you can use the tokens. And I hope, if nothing else, that I do spark a little bit of interest in the fact that if you haven't already, exploring casting, because I do think that's where, I know that that is certainly where my system shines, in that, because the whole point of my system is to look at the energy that's around you and how that energy is interacting. And so to be able to see that in a dynamic, overlapping, clustering, line making way, I think is really cool. And adds a lot of depth to a reading. Okay, so the second part of this is going to be about casting with a casting cloth. You can get all kinds of casting cloths. I have recently had gone on, well, not recently, but back in I was maybe November, when I was teaching a rune class, I was looking for my perfect, a rune casting cloth, because I do love to cast on a cloth, and now that's upside down. And I really did a ton of looking and searching and looking. And then I came across this particular rune cloth that I purchased. I think it was like $23. It was, in my opinion, from all the cloths that I had looked at, the pricing was amazing and it looked amazing. I did a video talking about this cloth, and I will put a link to that in the description box below, because I loved this cloth. So when I, of course, started to do my casting system, I knew, because I've used this, and I was using it for my OMs and I was using it for runes, because I just like to have, and having used this for a while, I knew exactly what I wanted. I really used the 4 squares a lot. I really used the circles a lot, and I really used the fact that you can split it into 3 a lot with the runes or the OMs. And so when I was working through, starting to set up the guidebook and all that kind of thing, I made, not this exact one because this has been tweaked, but I should be getting close here. Let's see. I made something that looks similar to this. And I got to change the lighting. I had the window open, but I think that's not going to be useful. There we go. I made something similar to this, where it was basically what was here, but minus all of the runic things, because this is obviously not for runes, and really spent some time thinking about what was my perfect casting cloth. What would it look like? And for me, that would be this, and this is stunning, and I still use this for runes, but what was interesting is that when I kind of mapped this out, like this was what this is all I need. I want it to be a little bit cleaner so that just the runes or whatever I'm casting can stand out, and it has everything in place that I want to have in place. And so when I was doing that and thinking, okay, well, how can I get this printed up so I can use it? The Corey, who is the man who did this, and again, I will put links to his shop down below, and the video that I did reviewing this, he contacted me and said, I saw your video about my cloth, And because I had just done, that was not a, you know, looking for a review. I really had searched a lot for cloth. I had purchased it. I'd put it on Instagram and people were interested in it. So I did a video about it. But I hadn't sent the link to him because, I don't know, I guess I should have, but I hadn't. Anyways, he had stumbled on it himself because that was back in November. He said, I saw your video about my cloth and I would love to have the opportunity to, you know, collaborate with you on what would be a perfect cloth for you. And I'm like, well, that's kind of funny because I'm literally just sitting here trying to find somebody who would print up my, you know, my perfect cloth. So that, again, I feel like this system, not this system, the process of developing and putting out this system for me has been full of these just wonderful synchronicities that, you know, just are amazing. So I sent him what I had done in Word, which is basically this, but not as pretty. And he had worked up a couple images. And so there's a section in the guidebook about why this is set up the way it is, why this is important to me. So what was important to me was to have the fire, air, water, and earth. They are in that order because of the way that I read. I use geomancy, and geomancy goes fire, air, water, and earth. And so that's how I set up my elemental tarot readings. That's how I set everything up in that order. And so for me, we have fire, air, water, and earth. I like that we have the active energy. We have the receptive energy down here. I really like to have the air and the water because when those things, the heart and the mind can come in conflict a lot. And so I like to be able to see those interactions. Out of groundedness and stability is where we can then grow to leap with our passions. So it just works for me to be in that particular order, but that was a must-have because that is how I read. Primarily when I'm casting things, I like to see these. Now, I also love to have the inner kind of soul of things. You have sort of the subconscious area of things, and then you have the conscious. So you could do the unconscious, conscious, and higher consciousness. You could also do the body, you know, I would probably reverse that. I would have this as being the soul, right? And this as being the body, and this as being the spirit, or however, depending on what the question is. If the question is primarily focused on issues of the body, I might change those kinds of things up. But there's a lot of things that you can do. This for me is the heart of the matter, right? And then this is often things that are out and forward, and these are things that are in the subconscious or in the unconscious, things that are beneath the surface of what's going on out here. That's primarily how I use that. Oops, sorry about that. We also I like to use the 3 cauldrons in Celtic mythology. So you could have the triad here where you're going to have the internal cauldron of warming influence the cauldron of motion, which then interacts with the cauldron of wisdom. So you can have the cauldrons in there, which is nice as well. And so then you of course have the sets of 3 this way, which you can do of more cycles, like beginning, middle, and end, or you can have past, present, and future, those types of things. Any kind of 3 spread that you can think of, right? So I like to have those options. So that was important to me. I do like the directions to be on there. I pay attention to those mostly when something is directly on the lines, and it just kind of adds that extra layer to be in there. So this was before, you know, he contacted me. This is what I had kind of jotted down and figured out on my word processing thing, that if I had a spread that was how I would want it to be, this would be, it would be clean, it would be open for just the things that I'm casting to show up, and it would have the things that I want to have in place to be there. And so here we have it. And so this is something that you can purchase, not from me, from him. And I will put a link to that in the description box below. This, I think, well, this is what I will be using for OMs. Also, obviously, runes. And then also obviously my own casting thing. So anything, and charm casting, anything that I cast, I can cast on here because there isn't any runic images, there aren't any OM images, there aren't any charming casting images, other than this tree here, which is the logo for my tokens, and probably will be shifting over to being sort of the logo for Truth and Story, just because I drew it myself. And so that just kind of opens this up to being used for a lot of different things. And so he did an example up in raw muslin, which is what I had wanted, just because the bag comes in raw muslin. I really wanted the tokens to pop and to stand out. And when I'm when I'm doing readings for people, I sometimes had found that the darker made things darker, obviously, in terms of the video. Although I have to say that I really like this. I like the way that the dye, I don't know if this is tea staining or how this is stained. I'll have to take a look and see for that for sure. But I like the way that it kind of goes out from the middle. This particular piece of fabric really has a watercolor feel to it. So I've actually been using this one a lot as well. So, but you know, I'm kind of going back and forth, and it's probably just going to be on my own particular feelings at the moment that I'm, you know, getting ready to do a casting of some sort, right? So, yeah, so I will put a link to his shop below, or to the links to these actual cloths below, and that way you can see those. So that was really exciting, again, scent of happenstance that occurred, which I just love. Now, but again, there are lots of casting. Most of you probably, not most of you, but many of you who already do runes or already do OM probably have a casting cloth. And there are tons out there. I spent a lot of time when I was looking for the runic one to find just like that perfect casting cloth. And there are so many of them. Of course, I was looking for tree imagery. I really did want something that was split up in 4 at the minimum, so that made it a little bit harder for me. But it can be anything from a plain piece of cloth to sometimes you'll see big tree of lives, and there's no positions on it. It's just kind of a beautiful cloth to cast on. There's just a ton of variety out there, and again, some of you may have them. People make wonderful ones where you can get a piece of cloth and you can, you know, get some fabric paint or fabric marker and make some beautiful cloths. But casting cloths in general are, you know, just an amazing thing. And as I said earlier in the video, I think that casting cloths for casting systems are sort of the best of both worlds between spreads and casting, because you get the randomness of casting, but you get some positions to work into how to read and navigate those castings. So I cast almost everything with sets of 9. So if I am casting runes, I am taking 9. If I'm casting OMs, I'm taking 9. There are occasions in which I will do a full spread. Those are a lot of work, and there's a lot of information on the table to work through. I personally find a 9-figure casting to be just the best all around. It's 3 + 3 + 3, which is growth, growth, growth. It's 3 × 3. It's the number 9, which is dynamic energy. It just works for me really well. So that's how I traditionally cast anything other than charm casting. Charm casting, I will sometimes cast the whole thing, or a lot of times I just randomly grab a handful and cast off of that, and I'm not actually counting things up. I'm sitting there while I'm, you know, thinking about the question, I'm just mixing, then I just grab and cast, and I don't actually count anything up. So I will say I don't generally just cast 9 of charm casting, but anything else that I do tend to cast 9 with. So, you know, much like we did, you know, just recently, where we were doing more spreads that we might be picking out, you know, you're going to be mixing. And then you're going to pull out your tokens. See, I just kind of grab hold and see on this. I generally, if I'm paying attention, I generally can grab 3, 3, and 3. That's usually what I do. If I grab more, I don't worry about it. I have 3, 4, 5. So I'm mixing. I think about the question. I grab out another set. So now I have 8. And then I know I'm mixing, and I grab another one until I have the number that I need. So once I have the number that I need, that's randomly been grabbed, you know, then you start to sort of think about your question, Shake, think about your question. You know, just like you would be shuffling if you're a person who shuffles cards, right? I'm trying to hold my hands out. Normally I would be back here, but I'm trying to hold my hands out here so that, you know, you can see what I'm doing. So it's kind of awkward. So shake. I love the final, like, shake and cast. And one of them went flying. This will happen sometimes. There's a couple ways that you can do this. This over here, that's way over here, you can say that is off the table and you simply don't read it. This is definitely was off the table, and so you can just put those away and not read them. The other thing you could do is leave this here and understand that that might be energy that's leaving, and understand that because that was way up front, just kind of put it on the edge and say to yourself, okay, that's energy that's really far out. It's not something, you know, summer's coming. It's coming, but it is not here yet. It is still pretty cold and there is still winter. Feel vibes of winter in the air. So that's kind of up to the caster. Generally, if something goes off of the table, I kind of treat it as not part of the main reading, but I do, you know, just acknowledge it and see what it is and understand that it's kind of way out there, right? And some of that is getting comfortable with your casting as well. So it just depends on how you want to treat that. But then you have your things in place and you can start to read. I'm going to do an example reading, but this is just me kind of showing you. I do like to keep a, I have crystals all around me. This little garnet set has kind of coalesced into being my set for to keep with my tokens, but you can use anything, pennies, whatever you want to use. I find this is helpful in OMs, runes, and this, where things can flip over, and you want to flip it back over, but you want to make sure it's noted that that was face down. So then I can kind of either go, I usually kind of work my way around, but you could go through and flip them all and just make note that this was flipped over, so that as you go about your reading, and this I want to make sure that I note that that was on top, but I want to say that was flipped face down, right? And this just helps two things. A, it allows you to see what's going on, but still know what's been face down. And then later, if you're taking a picture of it for yourself or for clients, they can see, of course, again, what had been face down. It doesn't help to take a picture of these face down because they're not going to be able to see what it is. So that's how I have ended up working with this. And it works really well for me. I quite like using, again, I was using this with OM readings and rune readings, and it just works well. So then you go about doing the business of your reading by, you know, looking in what's going on in the area of fire, what's going on in the area of air, water, earth, what is at the heart of things. I usually start there. If there's anything in there, what's at the heart of things? And you go about doing your reading. Again, I'm going to show you an actual reading. I just wanted to kind of go through quickly the sort of the process there of pulling and casting and processing, at least in terms of things that are flipped over when you are using a casting system. Okay, so I'm going to do a reading here, and an actual reading, so you can kind of see the whole thing from beginning to end. So I'm going to actually, you can hear it, I'll be mixing, but I'm going to mix it where I normally do, which I normally kind of hold it like this, like a feed bag, and it's kind of up to my chest. And I just kind of sit there as if I was shuffling and thinking about the situation, thinking about the question. And the question here is in regards to a relationship. I think I might have already done a relationship one, but this is a different one. People have relationship questions. and sort of where things are going and what energy needs to be addressed in this relationship. So I've got 3. And 3. So I'm going to now set the bag aside and take my 3. I'm going to move this and this off of here. I'm going to shake these over again in more of my normal position. That way I'm not stretching and not being focused on what I'm trying to do. So, but just note, I'm going to be kind of mixing back and forth and doing some shakings. So that was a very close one, and you'll see I could cast these like 15 times and you're going to be able to see all kinds of configurations. Sometimes it casts far, sometimes it casts wide. I do try to get, I don't want to do it now because I want to actually pay attention to this particular reading, but I do want, you do want to get sort of a rhythm or a feel for how you cast. I do like to get a little bit of height so that things can, you know, spread out and kind of do their thing. So I do tend to do a little bit. If you cast straight forward like you are casting dice, they're obviously going to run off the side of the thing more consistently, and everything is going to tend to go more into the future. If you think of this, if you're not using a casting cloth, and you are casting this to this to this, they're going to go towards the future more, right? So you kind of have to get a feel for that. I find personally, especially for this, where I wouldn't be using a past, present, and future, I'm going to be using more of the circular nature here and going past, present, and future if I was going to do that. I want things to stay somewhat here, and so getting a good shake and giving it more of an upward cast kind of spreads things around the cloth a little bit better. It depends on your cloth. It depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? But a lot of things, in fact, it's the first time I've had a cast like this where everything's kind of in this internal level. There's a lot of things. So without even looking at the figures, right, I can see there's a lot of things going beneath the surface. There's a lot of deep things. There's a lot of important things in the middle of things. That's, you know, that tells me something without even looking at what the figures are and where they're at. And so I think that that's important. We also have several things that are either in the heart, like at the heart of things, or that they're at the heart but they're crossing into other zones. I also really pay attention to things that straddle lines like this, especially. This one to me is much more to do with fire, but when it's like this, we're looking at something that is having an impact on both the air and the water realm. So how I would start to process this particular spread is I would start in the heart of things first. We do see that spring is in the heart. We are currently, at least we're in the northern hemisphere, we are in the process of spring, shifting into spring. So spring, of course, is when I look at these particular tokens, and there's a lot of beginnings like spring or a new moon is a beginning. The seasons for me are more about the environment, the actual, you know, our world that is around us. And so this does indicate some shifts and some changes and some beginnings that are potentially there in the actual physical environment of this relationship, where they interact, where they live, their status, whether they're living together or living apart, those kinds of things that are physical. This is in their environment. We do see some changes here, some fresh air coming in. I'll look to see what is blocked. So we have some animal energy that may need to be pulled forward. That was reverse, which means it's there, but it's maybe not being utilized, right? So then you're going to take your D20 and cast, and I got a 20. Natural 20! If I was playing D&D, that would be a fabulous thing. But we're not. So you would go to the chart here, either mine or your own chart that you would make up, and you could see the potential here with the bat. What I love about bat and why I really wanted, so this is in the condition, in my system, I have the 4 elements, and then within those 4 elements, I have insect, reptile, land, water, and air. So this is the air animal that's in the realm of earth. And what I love about this is that this is a mammal, but it can fly. And from what I understand from the Japardea Tarot, this is something I really came to love in the Japardea Tarot, which has bats in the suit of the swords, is it's the only mammal that is capable of flight, which I think is really amazing. And there's this potential about bats, if you really start to get to know them, because you have a deck that uses them, and the way that they use sonar, and the way that they're able to navigate, and the way that they're able to fly. All of these things obviously give them the potential to succeed as what they are. So the key word for this for me is this idea of potential. So we can see that the potential is there for for the environment that they are in to improve, to have fresh beginnings, and that might be at the heart of where some of the issues with this relationship might be, have to do with that. And so that could indicate something that is going to move things in the direction that they want things to go in. So I like to see that there. I'm going to look at these two because they are crossing from the middle and kind of moving more fully into the element. So in this case, we have the element of water, and we have a blockage here that isn't, again, energetically, it's face down. So there is some potential blocks, right? These deeper issues, what's at the heart of things has a potential block in terms of emotional area and their relationship, right? Emotions, the suit of water is about our feelings and our emotions, and then how our feelings and emotions connect us to other people, aka our relationships. And so this issues that are being revealed by what's at the heart of the matter have the potential to have an impact, and in this case, a negative impact on how people are feeling about the relationship, right? So the surroundings needing a fresh take, right? Needing to be moving in a fresh direction, have new beginnings and growth happening there in their physical surroundings is important, because if it's not dealt with, it has a potential to cause a block to the feelings and the emotions that are in this relationship or part of this relationship. So that's important to look at. I'm going to look at this one because, again, it touches on goes from the heart of the matter into the realm of the mind. And here we have the roots. Now we can see that we have both the branches and the roots of the tree. The roots of the tree for me are digging deep, right? This is that sense of connection that goes to the web. So for me personally, again, everybody's different how they see the world tree. The branches of the tree are up in the branches where you can see clarity. This is where our higher self is. This is where divinity resides, or spirit guides, and angels, if you work with angels, up in the branches of the tree where you can get a bigger picture. The trunk of the tree is where we sit with our back against the tree, where we can go up or we can go down, but we're kind of rooted in this physical plane, and you can kind of go left or right, step just, right of center and go into fairy as well. But that for me is a little bit more, energy is a little bit more in place with the third road token or symbol. I tend to put my dice over here by the little guy here. So for me, and then the roots are our ancestors. This is where we are really dug in and rooted and gotten solid. This is down in the earth where ancestor energy, animal spirit energy, there is support. This is how, for me, you access the web that connects everything. And so we have this sense of grounding and the sense of deep connections that, again, face down, right? It's a little bit blocked. The energy's not fully in play. That solid grounding and that can really rock solid connection is taking care of this. What's at the heart of things is impacting that mental connection and really being able to stay mental. So we can see being able to stay mentally in the relationship and being able to stay emotionally into the relationship has being impacted by what's at the heart of things, which is this energy of changing the environment, refreshing the environment so that there is that potential there that we see with the bat for things to grow and to flourish and get rooted and grounded, not be blocked, those kinds of energy. So for me, those things are really important because they are touching on and being impacted by the heart of the matter. Right? So then when you're doing castings like this, you just need to sort of follow the flow of what things catches your eye, right? So of course I'm going to start at the heart of things because there's a lot going on here. But the next thing that caught my eye is this because it's so out here and solidly in the realm of emotions and in relationship. And this is a relationship question. So I'm going to look over here, and here we have the third eye. So this is one of the energy points that you can relate to, again, chakras. There are sets of 2 of each of those that can relate to the Cauldrons of Warming for me, not the Cauldrons of Warming, the Cauldrons in Celtic mythology. There's a lot of ways to approach those energy points, but these are energy points that are within ourselves, and this is that space for really listening to our intuition, really listening to our gut, paying attention to our psychic senses, seeing a little deeper, right? The third eye is about seeing sort of, again, beneath the surface, but we have this blocked in the realm of water. So the way that the person that I'm reading for, and potentially even the other person, but this is read for the other person, the way that they feel and their emotions about this relationship are blocking them from maybe seeing very clearly. And that's not easy to do, right? To step outside of emotions and see deeper can be very difficult. Relationships mean so much to us. They are our longing for relationships, our connections that are there, our support that we feel in relationships or don't feel. There's so much of ourselves that can get bound up in relationships that I think it's very difficult to see sort of clearly and really listen to your intuition around them, but it's also so important that we do. So being able to sort of step out a little bit from this might be important. And what's interesting, I guess I'll not move it, but what's interesting is that we have the air sign straddling the 2 of them. The heart and the mind need to come together more fully into the mind, right, with the air here, because the emotions are kind of blocking being able to see clearly. That makes it even more important that we bring together the heart and the mind so that those are in balance, that we're seeing clearly and we're also feeling clearly, and we have those emotions. We don't want to turn our emotions off, but we want to make sure that those things are in balance so that we can see clearly. And this is a real good combination of these 2, is that indication that more air needs to come in so that you can open up that ability to see more clearly. So we have that's going on there. And of course, since that's pulled us into the air, I'm going to go look at this last air thing, right? Because it just makes sense to you. Just follow the flow of the reading. You're not, I don't think there's any hard and fast, do this, do this, do this, do this, because it really depends on how the tokens end up casting and what catches your eye, listening to your intuition about you're going to go here, and then following the threads of the reading. And that's kind of how, at least that's how I approach any kind of a casting method. Although I will say the one exception is I do tend, if something falls into the heart of things, I do tend to look there. So here we have actually the season of winter in the realm of the air, and again we have that reverse. Winter for me is all about clean, cool, crisp clarity, right? It is also a bit of a space to rest for a moment, right? It is a space of hibernation in many ways. Again, I'm coming from the northern hemisphere. I'm also coming from a climate that does have winter, spring, summer, and fall. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. Anyways, mini song moment here. But I do experience, where I live, I experience all of the seasons. And so for me, winter is cold, and it is ice, things that are freezing up, and it is staying inside more because it's cold outside, and there's snow everywhere, and things are, car doors get frozen and all that kind of thing. But it is also, when you walk outside, the quality of air is crisp and clear, and it's got that swordsy feel to seeing things clearly. And again, that was in reverse. It's very difficult for emotionally and in the mind for there to be a sense of clarity. And so with this straddling this needs to come together. There needs to be some balance brought between the heart and the mind to make good decisions. And understanding that what's at the heart of the matter, what really needs to shift, is impacting both of those areas as well. So we're definitely seeing the heart of the matter in the air and the water as being really in play in terms of the answering the question, or just kind of getting a feel for what's going on. So then what we have left here are the two fire, what's in the realm of passion here, what's in the realm of transformation. We have another one of the energy points here. And this is the third energy point that is often associated with will, with confidence. There is that sense of confident power that is there. And it's in the position of fire, which is that sense of forward moving energy that is transformative and following our passions and following strong movement forward. But that again was face down. So there is the sense of this needing, this sense of confidence, this sense of will, this sense of determination in dealing with the issues in the relationship are not fully engaged because of what we just talked about. I'm trying to keep this relatively short, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but because of what we were just talking about. And then finally, that we actually need some clarity in regards to really get things moving again, to get the passion fully engaged, to get whatever the situation surrounding the relationship active again and engaged and transformative. There really does need to be a getting up into the branches of the tree. We need to be able to see things clearly. We need to be looking, not we, but the person here, needs to be looking up from a bit of a height and kind of coming from a space of the higher self so that you can see more clearly what's happening. So again, don't want to dwell on things too much because I just want to give you an example here of how you might approach a casting. So I'm going to actually, I know people laughed because earlier I said I should have taken a picture of it. I was doing a video, but it's easier to take a picture than it is to go remember to go back and screen cap the video. Plus it's not as good as a picture. So I'm going to grab that so I can address it more closely, and then I'm going to pick these up. And the only other thing I want to do here, I hope that you've kind of seen where the other video was about spreads, obviously, and reading in specific positions. I think that, this at its heart, this is a system that works amazing with casting. And I'm just going to cast a couple more times just so that you can see. I'm not trying to really do anything too much here other than just to show you there's different ways, how many different ways in which, things can fall in so many different ways. So this is like the shuffling part, right? You're shuffling and seeing when you go to split, or maybe it's like the split. So if this is like the shuffling, mixing, 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 shaking, mixing, shaking, that's like the shuffling. And then what we're doing is splitting the cards, which is what gets us, things into their position. So this one, you would either say, not in play. This one to me is still in play. It's still on there. This one you could either say not in play or something really kind of out of focus. I would probably just not have this one in play, but you know, that's again up to each person. So there's so many different ways in which these things can fall. Whoops, that was a poor casting. I probably truthfully would have redone that casting because I could feel as I let it go that it just, I was losing control of the cast. So you really do want to be in the zone. You want to be having your intuition engaged. You want to be doing the ritual of reading right when you do your castings. And finding out what works for you. Whether you have this where you want things to spread centrally, or you have a sheet where you want things to spread moving forward that way. They are, that's going to depend on what it is that you're trying to accomplish in the reading. So I hope that this has helped at least give you an idea about using my particular journey token system. The first video having to do with specific spreads. The second, this current video about casting, whether you don't have any positions involved whatsoever, or you have some kind of a spread cloth that has some positions worked in, so that then you can see the natural flow of things, but still have areas that help you zone in on the reading. And for me, that's the sweet spot. But I do also sometimes love to cast and just free flow it. I did a bunch of readings like that with my niece and my daughter, just with no casting involved, and just having them cast and kind of seeing just where things moved and melded and following the path of the casting, and that can be really fantastic. So many different ways to approach it, and hopefully at least this gives you some insight into, if you've never used a casting system, how you could go about with one. So thank you for taking time to watch. I appreciate it.